but there were plenty of highlights in that race. We went 4 wide on many occasions, and the intensity just continued to ramp up.
It was absolutely wild, and still a very clean race, even when you consider how many cars we crammed into that number 2 hairpin. 4 wide at one point, and an expert display of side and almost bump drafting on the way down the main straight. The run into turn 1, that was perilous.
Certainly was. Here we saw late on Reynolds and Spark were at the front. Reynolds went for it around the outside, but he was joined by the number 35 of Kinsella, who went all the way around the outside. It was this way throughout the entirety of the race. 8 laps, the top 5 could not be separated all the way through.
Absolutely unreal, and what a venue. Here was that moment, 4 wide, a little bit of contact there as that machine going out onto the apron. Reynolds fought so hard throughout the majority of the race. There's our unfortunate DNF.
That was Evelyn McCarthy late on in the day as they went over the brow of the hill, and this was the run to the line. Waving his hands in delight, McDonald taking race number 1 of Australian Formula V here at Sydney Motorsport Park. A great race. He led when it mattered.
Let's have a look at some of our race highlights though, and there's going to be a couple in here too to talk about here. Nice start, but Morale didn't muck around, got to the front of this grid and managed to get away in that Mustang and held a comfortable lead the entire time. It was Anthony though in the Jägermeister BMW who kept fighting for that number 2 position, didn't he? But there were some moments throughout here that got pretty sketchy for the BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. He took the lead with a great move around the outside at turn number 6, but sadly he'd lead for less than a corner because at the very next corner he just ran it in too hot at Corporate Hill, ran wide through the grass and found the tarmac on the outside of the corner. That demoted him to 4th. From there he did move up a little bit, but only as far as 3rd come the end of the race. There are a few smoke signals further back down the field, the smoke signals we don't want.
Yeah, that definitely looked like a lot of oil smoke there. That wasn't tyres for us. Oh look, the Commodores here, they were going to battle that out. Always there in the 34 car of Mitch Rice there for a moment. It was the Corolla though, he went really wide, like you say, well over 45 degrees, had to try and get that. And what they say, turn left to go right?
Yes,
like that.
yeah.
Had to just make sure he got through that one. In the end though, it was a clear winner here from Adrian Morale, who gets over in the Mustang. It was dominant obviously after qualifying where he was number 1. Managed to take race 1 win as well. And look, let's see though, because I tell you what, the Jägermeister BMW there of Anthony's.
We look at your highlights of race number 1, the pole sitter, but look at the car on the second row. Missed gear, made it 4 wide briefly on the way to turn number 1 as Tim Brook led us through. Jackson moved up to 2nd briefly. This was Stibbs and Gartner up ahead with Josh Webster in the Autofix Ford Mustang. The early stages of this race, but then big dramas were to come for the 200. He tried to make the move down here, albeit awkward, through that left-hander. This was Davies and Thomas. So TFH cars featuring in the top 10. And then the moment here of the drive shaft breaking away from the Autofix cars, sending debris down the track, which in the end saw the Brock Payne car run over debris and cut his left front tyre down. And the Autofix Mustang going down the escape road and up ahead, all the smoke. That was another incident. It wasn't from one of the TFH cars that was locking up at turn 6. But for Brock Payne, he didn't get that car back to the pits, and that Goodyear tyre flapping away, and hope there's not too much internal damage with the 33 Chevy Camaro.
Yeah, you hope that is just mainly panel damage, that they can bolt some brand new ones on and get that car back out there very swiftly. But yeah, and this was another big moment, the restart. They've done about 8 laps under cold tyres, and then Domain Rams in the 71 goes really deep under brakes. Mark Crutcher caught up as well in an incident there, and he's gone deep, and I feel like that might have been cold tyres. Now, Brad Gardner in the final moments of this race trying everything he could to get to Davies and Thomas was just waiting for his moment, and we saw it here in the final moments of the race.
He just lured him in, didn't he? I don't think he was ever going to lose that race lead, but the margin, just 0.4 of a second from Brook back to Gomersall, and Gomersall just picking the points. It's all he needs to keep doing this weekend. And Tim Brook picks up the win.
Well, let's have a look at some of the race highlights. It was on from the start, wasn't it? Williams and Evanet were going to go at it, but there was this contact here with Salvatore and Forson. Now, Salvatore spun off the track and managed to get it back online, but we know in the background the number 23 went off. And then there was a big moment here for the 56, wasn't there? as he spun off the track there. Bellac, I mean, that was a huge moment. Could have Fitzgerald. That could have been a lot worse than it was.
Oh, that was a great move from Holly, wasn't it? Really backed it in there at turn number 1. Brad James did the same thing, but he was just in a bit too deep, backed it in, locked up and ran wide. He locked the rears. This man on the screen, Johnson, locked the fronts and got escorted wide.
Look at the shuddering, though, as he pulled that down to number 14. He did a little bit of a fight back at the end there, managed to get himself in position. You see Bellac just run wide there at the moment. Now, here was a moment where we thought, potentially, as Evanet dove down the inside of Williams, he really took it to him, but he couldn't make the move stick. In the end, he couldn't get the pass done. Now, still out on the outside there, just giving us some sparks in the night. Fitzgerald there making a lot of outer moves over the ripple strip. In the late stages of the race, they tapped the handbrakes, managed to get past the Pioneer DJ entry there of Bellac as well. So just slowing down. And this was as we crossed the finish line there, and a big celebration from Williams as he held out Evanet in an epic race number 1 here for the weekend for the Formula Ford. And I'm sure they'll be talking about that down in pit lane. Let's have a look at some of the highlights. We said off the start between Crossland and Sterling it was going to be interesting. Sterling got to an early lead though, didn't he? And Crossland had to really fight. And have a look on the outside. It wasn't 2. He managed to keep going. Now this was the moment. The 64 went off. Had a big moment there off in the dirt. Then we saw brake lock up there from Summons as well. So there's plenty of little moments there, I suppose, on these tyres.
Yes, certainly was. Plenty of talking points throughout the race, no matter where you looked through the pack. This was the fight. Girton was right in it for position number 2 and 3 at one point in the race, but didn't these two come home strong? And they had a great tussle for position number 2. Hamish Layton sliding up the inside of Crook, but he had the inside, did the latter for the 3rd corner. Great race in between them. Finally though, Layton made it stick up the inside at turn 2, while Smith got through on French and then came like a train towards those top 2 late on.
Yeah, it really went down to the final moments, didn't it? And Layton did a fantastic job, I think, to hold out Crook that moment. Nicholas French will be the one to unpack there to find out exactly what went wrong, because he went back a number of positions.
That was the damage there for Damon Sterling, our championship leader. But behind that, 2 positions further back, Hayden Crosland took his 3rd race victory of the season.
That's their final race for tonight. We'll see them back out tomorrow, of course, as part of the Hi-Tec Oils Super Series. But let's have a look at some of the highlights of this race. Asker Sendel start off the front row, but Brian Pring come from 6th position out of this race to go around the outside. The Aussie number 1, Chris Spicer, got involved in something very early. Have a look at the cars sliding here. This was Craig going by in one of the CXC machines, went out over the ripple strip. That may have caused something in the car, because a couple of laps later we saw him really lose a bit of pace and get out of this 7-car battle that it ended up being. Then we got down to these 3, and for a number of laps, that's what it was. It was Pring taking on Dylan Thomas, taking on Aiden, taking on obviously Asker Sendel, and this is how it kept going. There was this moment over there where we had a couple of cars and a yellow on turn number 2, which always takes out an overtaking opportunity. We saw Craig with a big lock up there. Before we get back to these top 3 again, and Asker Sendel wasn't afraid to run the wall to try and get an advantage here at this point. He got back in the lead for just a slim moment, and this one was all on his own. The number 3 of John Holder just spun out, no contact made, which was great. And have a look how close this was then. Nathan Preto was in the mix there, just trying everything he can to try and improve from that 9th position where he did start. Dylan Thomas, this is the final moments of the race, overtaking Holder, who was a lap car, and across the finish line to get himself his first race win of the weekend, with Ryan Pring in 2nd and Asker Sendel coming across in 3rd.
And just like that, whoever did this, well done, because there was a lot going on in race 1 of the Australian Production Car Championship. The little Mercedes-Benz. Well, this was the only challenge that went at the front here, but we saw what happened later for the Merc and the BMW when they got together.
Yeah, very briefly, with the move up the inside when Morale ran wide, through went the Mercedes into the lead of the race. Further back in the invited class, there was some great tussles with a variety of different body shells, engine configurations. That was the mistake there from White, which really put him on the back foot and never really recovered from that moment. and yeah, he dropped through the field. There was the difference in pace on pit straight, shown very, very effectively. Oh, we didn't see this. The Mini having an off-track excursion, the 181 machine grass tracking through turn 3.
But this is the one we'll talk about all season. The two German cars treading like this was $1 million to win on the final lap of a race. And ultimately they would make contact, which saw him go back into the pits. We didn't see what actually happened between the two. What we do know was there was a lot of damage.
Yes, certainly was. So this was just before the Mercedes. The number 91 went off after making the move. He had a look up the inside at turn number 4. And then, as you could see, they came together. And Inwood was not happy about it.
It certainly didn't have a fit of the giggles about what happened there earlier in the race. And car 34 started to limp of Rice. He parked it on the left-hand side. But out in front, this guy was nearly a minute ahead of second place man, but backed it off some 10 seconds a lap. Hadrian Morale picks up the first win of the Australian Production Car Championship under lights here at Sydney Motorsport Park.
Well, let's have a look at some of the Hi-Tec Oils highlights from this race number 2 here on a Friday night. And it all started, didn't it? Williams got the run into turn number 1 and Evanet on the outside. But we know that Roger said, hey, I'm going to put my nose in there and have a look at this one.
Certainly did. This was Fraser High getting in the thick of the action. Brad James, this was the sketchy moment when he had it all locked up. But as I say, that was very great heads-up driving from Jack Johnson to see that one coming. The sparks were flying both on the racetrack and from underneath the cars as well as the fighting continued. This was the fight for third position between Lowing, Rowe and Fawcett. Let's not forget Fawcett, who made the move on Rowe at turn 2, came from the very back of the field to finish on the podium.
Yeah, very quick initially, wasn't to get 4 or 5 positions, then had to fight his way through, and it didn't go all his way to the end. This is towards the closing stage in the final couple of laps where Evanet had to just take every opportunity. But Williams decided, you know what, I just got to stay on the outside because you know there's a right-hander coming up, and as long as I can keep that momentum going, I think I can stay in the lead. Now, there was a moment down here where we saw Tabitha Ambrose go off. Not quite sure in the background there because Fitzgerald was there, but it didn't look like contact made. This was the final corner of the final lap, and Evanet just went a little bit wide, that off-camber section there where it pulls the car over the ripple strip. At that point, we thought he was slowing down, but the checkered flag was out and just comfortably home in second.
The winner, Kobe Williams, his 5th race win of the season.
Let's have a look at some of the highlights, though, of this Replica Tour Trophy Series, race number 2, and it was this opening corner where it all sort of started to unfold. Morale was going well. Steve Hay, I don't know how he missed the entire field as they all came through. That would have been devastating to see a finger laid on that car and see the damage potentially that it could have caused before another couple of Commodores spin off in the background as well.
I knew he didn't get hit, but I still winced watching it on the replay.
Yeah.
It was that sketchy through turn number 1. This one was a big talking point. Race 1 victor by quite a dominant margin, and in the production cars as well. Morale hitting problems at the start of the race. He was an unfortunate DNF.
Yeah, we saw the 96 of the Toyota 86 it was. Getting around, and there was a couple of moments there where he had a bit of a nosedive there. Big lock up now from the number 50 of Harry Everett. We saw a few tyre lockups again, and we're still debating on the tyre temperature. Stewart was very fast in the BMW M3 and got his shot on the Jägermeister car there. Unfortunately, he just couldn't keep going on with that one. The Jägermeister car, and another big lock up there, and this time it was the Pfeiffer in the big Ford Falcon XRT. Managed to keep going there. There's going to be a couple of tyres out there looking like 50-cent pieces at the end of this race.
Yes, certainly do. There was many lockups up and down through the field. But in the end, right at the death, the Coke Commodore Grimmond took the race lead. He only led about 500 metres, but they were the last.
Let's check out some of the race highlights here. A standing start, and it was a lonely front row.
Certainly was. Just one person on it, and that was McDonald. But he was hounded straight away down towards turns 1 and 2. He did lock up and lose a couple of positions. Fell down to 4th at one stage there in the race. While those two fought for 3rd, the top 2 fought for the victory, hammer and tongs.
A couple of sparks out there as an unfortunate choice of line really made him commit to that off-track excursion. The battle raged all the way back through the pack, but this man out in front, David Reynolds, doing a brilliant job. Another massive lock-up from the 44 machine. That was
both
Fremantle. Yeah, that's
didn't-
piling on some pressure to the brake pedal.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was just the one at first, but no, it was both wheels that significantly locked up into the hairpin. The fighting really did intensify late on in that race, and it quickly became a 4-car fight as a result.
Reynolds able to bring it home, but it wasn't for lack of trying from our top 4, trying to be the fly in the ointment. A great run to the finish and a last-second lunge, seeing a gap of 0.02 of a second between Reynolds and Kinsella.
Absolutely, very, very tight in the end. The top 4 within 1.1 seconds.